Scott Pilgrim versus the podcast, a podcast all about podcasts. No,
What?
I'm kidding. It's about Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, that
I'm
makes
Alex.
I'm Justin.
I'm Pete.
And if you have never listened to us before, we do a live show every Tuesday called Comic Book Club. We've been doing that for over 16 years at this point, talking about comic books with creators for many, many years, including Bryan Lee O'Malley, the creator of Scott Pilgrim. Back in the day, came on our live show. We were very big fans of the title, as we're going to talk about in a second. But this is the preview episode for our podcast. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be revisiting the books, revisiting the movie from 2010 by Edgar Wright, all in advance of the release of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off on Netflix, the anime adaptation of the comic book series, but with the cast from the movie. So there you go. That's a little bit of background. To start off here, this is something we always do on this podcast, even though this is the preview episode. Let's take questions from Pete. And now a question from Pete.
What do you think that title means? Do you think he takes off from the band? You know what I mean? Takes off, launches into fame? What do you
Maybe
guys
he
think?
takes a day off of work to make an animated series.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, that's great. And we'll get to that later on. First, to give you a little bit more basis for Scott Pilgrim, in case you don't know, like we mentioned earlier, is by a guy named Bryan Lee O'Malley. There are 6 volumes. They were published between August 2004 and July 2010. And then very soon after that, in 2010, this movie came out, directed by Edgar Wright, that has become a cult classic, beloved. And most importantly, on February 3rd, 2009, Bryan Lee O'Malley was trapped in Charlotte because of some snow. Couldn't make it up to New York. A panicked Alex Zalman, who was me, was sending a lot of emails trying to figure out what to do. But ultimately, Bryan Lee O'Malley got on a plane, flew up, drove from New Jersey through the snow to make it to our show 15 minutes late. We don't have a recording of it because it is pre-recording days for Comic Book Club.
It was a while back,
Yeah, we started recording the show in 2011. But I'll just say for the record right off, great guy, great conversation.
Great guy, great episode, fun. Great in snow.
Yeah.
He's like a human snow tire. He makes it all the way.
Yes. That's the big takeaway for the podcast. So before we get into Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, though, let's talk about our experiences with the book. Obviously, like we said, we talked about it a lot on our live show and our review shows. But do you guys fondly look back at the books? Do you hate them now? What's your experience here?
Fondly. I mean, I think I started reading, the second volume had come out, and I think that's when news was sort of spread around, or at least got to us, oh, this book's dope. And then to read it then, it sort of was one of my first exposures to what sort of all content and entertainment would become, half nostalgia, half interesting characters moving forward through nostalgia. And back then it felt like a revelation. And even into reading the series and into the movie, I was like, oh, this is what a great adaptation that took the comic book and really pushed it into the real world using innovative and exciting filmmaking techniques.
Yeah, I really loved the style of the art and the kind of the heart behind all the storytelling. The books were just such an amazing kind of adventure and fun, kind of cartoon meets anime style, where you had all these kind of fun action, kind of onomatopoeia stuff going on. That what I really loved was when they brought it to the movie, they brought all that fun comic book stuff kind of with it. And it was kind of this fun mash of comic book stuff and also video games. And it was just so creative and well done. And I felt like that was such a cool part of what made the comic great. And the comic hold in very high regard. All of them were just a ton of fun. So yeah, I'm very excited about not only this new animated series, but just kind of getting back to revisit this again.
Yeah, I agree. What I'm very curious about is, like you pointed out, Justin, in the intervening years, there have been a lot more things like this. So I'm just curious. I'm not passing judgment either way because I haven't read it in a while. We did a revisit podcast back in 2016 where we read the book again, but even that was a long time ago. So I'm curious to see how I feel about the books. I haven't really watched the movie much since. I think I've watched it.
What? Are you serious?
For real, yeah.
I watch it all the time.
You're watching it right now while we're taping.
It's
That's a real
definitely
fan.
in my queue of things to watch for sure. And also, I go down YouTube rabbit holes all the time of just clips of stuff. Like if I'm sad or something, I'll just put on
Really?
the bass battle or something. You know what I mean? That always cheers me up.
Well, that's what I'm saying
Wow.
is I haven't revisited in a while, so I'm excited to check it out. There's obviously been like a lot of not just change in entertainment, but change in conversation around this because particularly for the movie, Scott Pilgrim the movie became one of these things like not to lump it in the same place, but like Fight Club where dudes misinterpret it and they're like, "Oh, I should act like that." Right?
Yeah.
That's the lesson that I take from this. So they kind of miss the point a little bit because I don't think that's in the text and I don't think that's in the movie, but they take that as sort of like an object lesson of how to be without getting the toxic elements of this character, Scott, that are very blatantly put out there throughout the book, which we'll get it more into when we're jumping into it. But I'm curious to see how that changed from reading it now and from watching it now is my point.
Also, there was
Well,
there was two versions of the movie.
Well, hold on. I want to get to that in a second because I want to ask you
I
specifically
knew
about
you were
that,
going to
Pete.
say that.
No. Pete talks
Yeah,
about
because
this all
that's
the
your
time.
thing.
But Justin, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, like, it feels like a character like Scott Pilgrim was flaws built in. That the whole point of the series was he needed to be better and learn, and it took him a long time. And the comic didn't really say this guy's bad; he needs to get better. You just sort of observe that and sort of are along for the ride. And I think, like you're saying, people misinterpret that, but it's actually a really smart way to show character development and get us to sort of go through that same process alongside the character. So I actually think there are some things in here that I think will be updated in the new show because they need to be. But I think the progress is what is the point of the story.
Yeah, and I will mention real quick, because we haven't said it out loud, for anybody who has never seen or read Scott Pilgrim before, first of all, tune away from this very brief description, because part of the joy, particularly in the first volume, is discovering what it's about. But the idea is this dude called Scott Pilgrim lives in Canada. He doesn't really know what he's doing with his life. He dates people, loves them and leaves them and whatever. He becomes completely infatuated with this woman named Ramona Flowers and starts dating her and discovers, well, now he needs to battle her seven evil ex-boyfriends. Excuse me, seven evil exes.
There you go.
It ends up being these crazy video game style battles, but in the quote unquote real world. It's very funny. It's very weird. It's very romantic. Goes in some surprising directions over the course of the volumes as well as the movie. So that's obviously what we'll talk about. Now, in terms of the movie, without spoiling it though, just Pete, very quickly talk about your experience here, because you go to bat for the original version of the movie. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know
How is he going to do this without spoiling?
Without spoiling it. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, I guess not. Maybe save it for the discussion of the movie then, because this obviously is something that pays out over the course of the volumes. Just suffice to say, Pete saw an earlier version of the movie, and you are ride or die for that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, with a different, we can say there's a different ending in the.
Yeah, they changed the ending
first, and then the different, and so like, and the fact, and it's a major. It's like the ending is different. So it's very always funny that Pete A saw a version that is in the final version, and B loves that version more than the movie, but also loves the movie.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I don't know if they put this out anywhere. I assume maybe like as a Blu-ray extra or something. But we'll have to see if when we talk about the movie, maybe we can talk about the original ending as well. To jump into Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, though, this is finally coming out on Netflix on November 17th. Here's
Reason to keep Netflix.
Oh, I thought you were going to say to keep alive. The quick little
Both,
maybe.
Both.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
Equal
Netflix
weight.
and live. Netflix and
Live.
The logline for the show is Scott Pilgrim meets the girl of his dreams, Ramona Flowers, but learns he must defeat her seven evil exes in order to date her. Then things get even more complicated based on the graphic novels by Bryan Lee O'Malley. It is 8 episodes. It is animated. The cast includes, this is directly from the movie, reprising their roles now in voice form, Michael Cera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Satya Baba, Kieran Culkin, Chris Evans, Anna Kendrick, Brie Larson, Alison Pill, Aubrey Plaza, Brandon Routh, Jason Schwartzman, Johnny Simmons, Mark Webber, Mae Whitman, and Ellen Wong. Now, the showrunners are Bryan Lee O'Malley and Ben David Grabinski. And yeah, it comes from Science Saru is the people behind it. There's original songs by Anna Managuchi, I believe is the name.
Onomatopoeia and onomatoguchi.
There we go. We're saying a lot of stuff. So that should be cool. One thing that I'll mention, actually, just a side thing, my oldest, my 13-year-old, randomly out of nowhere, started reading Scott Pilgrim, was just looking for something to read. I was like, oh, this looks interesting, and pulls it out of the bookcase. Became totally obsessed with it. So we were looking back at the movie cast, and I kind of knew this intellectually, but I could not believe from just looking back, like the amount of people that were just on the cusp that they got together in this one movie that were
it's an all-star cast.
Well, but it wasn't then. That's the thing that's crazy. Like, Aubrey Plaza was first or second season Parks and Rec. Anna Kendrick had just done, like, The Friend in the Twilight movies. Michael Cera was obviously big, but, like, maybe he was the biggest star. Brie Larson, nothing really. Like, Jason Schwartzman almost maybe the biggest
Chris
star.
Evans before Captain.
Chris Evans had done stuff, but yeah, it was like pre-Captain America. Brandon Routh was probably a bigger star from doing Superman at that point than anything. Yeah. So it's wild.
Well, and also that everyone was so cuspy, but also the movie didn't really hit at first. It's such a hit. It's a movie that everyone, I think, has eventually elevated to be like, this movie's great. But at the time, I remember us being like, we love this movie, and it just wasn't considered a success.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, though, Pete, because you did want to mention, you are always big on the art style, taking it from the page, putting it on the screen. How did you feel about this now that we've seen a little bit of the footage?
It looks amazing. I'm super excited about it. I mean, the comic starts off kind of like, it was black and white first, and then they did some like colors later. But yeah, I was super impressed with the way this looks. It kind of looks like they made it, they took the kind of comic and then like video game did a little bit. It kind of has like a Mega Man feel to me, but I really like it. I'm curious though, is this just going to be like an animated, like they took the movie and then animated it and turned it into 8 episodes? I thought it might be different adventures.
So we don't know. It's not the movie. It's adapted directly from the graphic novel. Like, not that they're sidestepping the movie or anything like that, because the movie pulled directly from the graphic novels as well. The big question in my mind is, you got 8 episodes here. Are they doing the 6 volumes in 8 episodes? Or is it...
There's 7 evil X's, and then
8 episodes. It kind of feels like, to me, we also don't know the episode lengths. We don't know if they're half an hour or an hour or anything like that. But based on the trailer, it seems to me like they're doing the entirety of the series potentially in this season.
My guess is it's going to be a pretty, maybe almost the final form of the graphic novel, where it's what the graphic novel is taking anime and video game, making it into a comic book. This is sort of reversing that in a great way. But there's this quote that that was tweeted by Edgar Wright, I believe. It said, "The series doesn't just expand the universe, but also, well, just watch it." So,
you really left it hanging there, buddy.
Yeah, but I think you keyed into it when you say like 8 episodes. I bet it's going to be a very direct adaptation of the comics, and then it'll go a little further and expand out from there. Because I bet they want to do more of this. I'd
agree. I couldn't imagine Netflix being like, "Yeah, we're good with 8 episodes. That's fine. We'll cancel it after that."
Especially something that has the, its IP, it has the pop culture like hooks that
all-star
could truly blow, all-star cast. This could blow up, and then they're going to be like, well, let's do at least 2 or 3 more seasons of this.
Yeah, it turns out she has 7 more evil exes.
Whoa.
Wild.
Well, but here's the thing. If we want to speculate, what if we get into Ramona has to fight Scott's exes, which are a lot of our characters here.
Oh my God, that would be terrifying.
That makes a ton of sense.
Well,
that would be great.
Justin, I hate that idea. I hate that.
Yeah.
Well, why? Because you're scared?
I'm scared. Come on.
Also, you want to root for Ramona, but then going up against the drummer, I don't want to see that fight, because then I don't know who to root for.
You got to root for Kim.
Yeah, you do got to root for Kim,
so
right?
First episode, we're definitely jumping ahead. First episode, Kim Pine kills Ramona Flowers.
Yeah!
Great. Can't wait.
Season 2. Kick it off.
Season 2. Bring it on, baby. Well, listen, we're going to be bringing it on, baby. That's our catchphrase on the show.
We do say bring it on, baby.
Yes, as we continue to walk towards the November 17th release on Netflix. In the meantime, we're getting these feeds set up here, but they should be live everywhere pretty soon, so you can subscribe on any major platform. If you want to support the show and all the shows we do, patreon.com/Comic Book Club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Facebook and YouTube. Come hang out. We'd love to chat with you about Scott Pilgrim. Apple, Spotify, presumably Google, other places you can check out as we get set up here at Comic Book Live on Twitter, Comic Book Club Live on Instagram and TikTok, comicbookclublive.com. For this podcast and many more, until next time, this podcast is just starting to take off.
Whoa. Bring it on, baby.